Good evening and welcome back to Matters of Faith, our attempt to focus on the place that faith occupies in our lives. In India, more perhaps than in any other civilization, there is the ingrained belief that creativity, whether physical or spiritual, results from the union of opposing forces. Thus notions of male and female, god and goddesses, are only apparent polarities. In essence, they are one, though in appearance they are two. The male is identified with eternity, the female with time, and their embrace is the mystery of creation. The universe is the result of the union of Shiva Mahakala, or eternity, with Shakti, or the cosmic energy. The Kurma Purana tells us there is only one Shakti, and one possessor of Shakti, called Shiva. All other powers and possessors of power arise from Shiva and Shakti. This whole world is arisen from Shakti and the possessor of Shakti. Yet the goddess is seen too as a complete cosmic power in herself. Rather like Shiva or Vishnu, she creates, conceives, and destroys the universe. She is responsible for Srishti or creation, even as she brings about Samhara or destruction. In our Pilgrim's Progress segment tonight, we take a 12-kilometer trip up the hill to visit the Vaishno Devi shrine.
Long years ago, long before humanity allowed itself to record time, there lived a young woman named Vaishno Devi. In her devotion to Vishnu, she gave up worldly pursuits, swore herself to celibacy, and began her tapas so that Vishnu would grant her an exclusive darshan. In the wilderness, amidst the mighty Trikuta range, she began her penance, turning her back on the world. One day, it is said, she heard within her a voice that guided her towards the peak now named after her. It was a long and difficult journey. The view from the Devi Ma temple, where she is believed to have rested, gives us a glimpse of the arduous climb that awaited her. As she began her ascent of the peak, she was overcome with thirst. She shot an arrow into the soil. Fresh water sprang out, pure and crystal clear, like Vaishno Devi herself, at a spot now known as Ban Ganga. The Charan Paduka temple, a couple of kilometers uphill from Ban Ganga, marks the place where Vaishno Devi rested her tired feet before wending her way upwards. About halfway up the peak lies the Adkuvari temple, a cave where Vaishno Devi is said to have prayed for 9 months. The story goes that the demon Bhaironath, in his den far away from the cave where Vaishno Devi was praying, saw her one day in a tantric vision and was thunderstruck by her beauty. Consumed with lust for her, he began his quest for her. Far and wide, high and low he wandered, until he tracked her down in her cave retreat 9 months later. This is the reason why the cave is known as Garbhajun. When Bhaironath attempted to enter her retreat, Vaishno Devi blasted an opening at the other end of the cave with her trident. There she emerged in the form of Mahakali, cut off Bhaironath's head and flung it through the air. The demon's head came to rest further up the mountain at a spot now commemorated by the Bhaironath temple. Legend has it that the demon's headless torso quailed at the Devi's might, pleaded with her for forgiveness, which she willingly granted him. The boulder at the mouth of the holy cave in the Vaishno Devi shrine is said to represent the quivering torso of Bhairanath. Mata Vaishno Devi's blessings are sought throughout the year by thousands of pilgrims from all over the world who converge here. They take a bus or a taxi from Jammu to Katra. Those among them who are fit or who have vowed to do so then trek 12 kilometers from Katra to Bhavan, the seat of Vaishno Devi. The aged and the infirm take ponies or what is known as a dandi. Darshan is free, but often comes only at the end of a long wait. The pilgrimage to Vaishno Devi is arduous and not free from danger, but all those who undertake it recognize in their hearts the conviction that she will grant them their every wish. As they leave the idyllic surroundings of the shrine and make their way homewards, they feel uplifted, cleansed by a darshan that, though it is granted to hundreds of thousands every year, is somehow individuated, personalized by each one of them.
In his first letter to the Corinthians, Paul says, "For just as the body is one and has many members, and all the members of the body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. Now you are the body of Christ, and individually members of it." To many in India and elsewhere, this is not just a metaphorical description of the church, but a literal truth. They believe that they would be affirming their oneness with Christ by replicating his physical suffering, subjecting themselves to the same rigors and austerities, as we shall see in our myriad part segment tonight, where we ascend the legendary Malayatur Mount.
In the first letter of the Apostle Peter, it is said, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal which comes upon you to prove you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice, insofar as you share Christ's suffering, that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed." The Gospel gives us a harrowing account of what Jesus Christ was made to suffer after Pontius Pilate delivered him to the bloodthirsty mob. The evangelist Mark tells us that Pilate's soldiers led Christ away and clothed him in a purple cloak. Plaiting a crown of thorns, they put it on him and saluted him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Then they struck his head with a reed, spat upon him, then knelt down in front of him in mock worship. Later, they stripped him of his purple cloak and led him out to be crucified. Christ set out from Jerusalem bearing his own cross, stumbling frequently along the way, buffeted by the hooting and jeering of the crowd baying for his blood, until he arrived at Golgotha. Known as the place of the skull, this was where the soldiers finally crucified Jesus, after first offering him wine mixed with myrrh and taking his garments. For centuries, the faithful have sought to share Christ's ordeal, not only through fasting and prayer, but sometimes by physically subjecting themselves to the same rigors and punishments. Reliving Christ's journey from Jerusalem to Golgotha is a widespread practice amongst Christian communities in several parts of the world. And this is the origin of the pilgrimage to Purisumudi, atop the Malayatur Mount. For nearly 2,000 years, those who undertake this arduous climb to the top of the hill have believed that this literally draws them closer to God. At Easter, many pilgrims also bear a cross as they ascend the hill. The Malayatur Mount has a special significance in the minds of the Christians of Kerala, associated as it is with the Apostle Thomas, who lived and prayed atop the hill, using it as a spiritual retreat between missions. Devotees refer to the hill as Ponnum Purisumala, the Mount of the Golden Cross. Legend has it that one day, several years after the apostle had moved to Tamil Nadu, local hunters saw a blinding light on the rock where the saint used to pray. When they moved closer, they saw the golden cross with blood oozing from it, and blood-soaked footprints, presumably those of the apostle, around it. This wondrous sight led to an enduring belief in the miraculous and therapeutic powers of Malayatur Mount. The wax, soil and souvenirs that pilgrims carry away so preciously with them when they leave are said to be invested not only with the essence of the Apostle Thomas, but of Christ himself.
I've always been intrigued about how a snake charmer's music could actually make a serpent freeze. I discovered the glimmer of an answer while flitting through a book the other day. The word charm derives from the Latin carmen, which means magic song to win the grace of a superhuman being. The book went on to add that the term carmen was comparable to the Sanskrit saman, which literally means melody, though it is also used to mean soothing, appeasing, and charming. Music is the prasad that we offer the gods, not just to charm or soothe them, but also to proclaim their glory and their might. Our sadhana segment tonight presents glimpses of Gurbani, the sacred music of the Sikhs.
To the Sikhs, the Holy Granth Sahib is not just a repository of wisdom and truth. It is Godhead, Vaheguru. The Granth Sahib is a treasure trove of the saints, not only of the 10 Gurus of Sikhism, but also of many other great saints and holy men of India. This reflects the open-minded eclecticism of the Sikh faith, the Guru's overriding concern with building Sikhism as a broad, inclusive religion. In a society that was largely unlettered, it was recognized that not all believers could read the sacred text. Thus was born the tradition of reading and singing aloud verses from the Granth Sahib.
इस मन दे पिछे लग के सारा दिन दौड़िया फिरदा है कदे इधर कदे उधर.
Not only would this spread the faith amongst ordinary people, it would serve to preserve the wisdom of the Gurus in the memory of the faithful. Music, after all, is the vehicle of memory, the communicator of a tradition. Music provides the faithful with a way to cleanse the mind, purge it of the mundane and the worldly. It allows the believer to focus on Godhead, to suppress his ego, to submit himself to the Almighty. In the solemnity of a Gurudwara, the Sikh faith requires its followers to shed the paraphernalia of power, privilege and station to allow themselves to flow along with the tide of music. For music is what anchors people in a tradition and binds them together among themselves and with God.
What is the true function of a teacher, a guru? Is it merely to be a conduit of knowledge as it transits from one generation to another? Or is it also to interpret, modify, transform and renew the knowledge he received from his own gurus? In our Great Visionary segment tonight, we examine briefly the life and teachings of one of India's great philosopher saints, Shankara.
Outside Srinagar, there lies the Takht-e-Suleiman hill, the throne of Suleiman. A temple was first said to have been built here around 200 BC by the son of the great emperor Ashoka. Today, the Takht-e-Suleiman is referred to as the Shankaracharya hill, and the temple atop the hill commemorates the northernmost point of an epic journey undertaken in the 9th century AD by the great philosopher saint Shankara. It was a journey that had begun 3,000 miles away in Kerala in the tiny village of Kaladi, on the banks of the river Churna or Periyar, some 6 miles outside the town of Alway. As a mere child, Shankara had already offered ample proof of extraordinary brilliance. Even as he took his first steps, he had committed to memory the sacred and philosophical texts of the Hindu canon. Eventually, this mastery embraced logic and science. Legend has it that Shankara's knowledge enabled him to divert the course of the river Periyar, thus saving his mother the trouble of going to fetch water from a great distance. Responding to an inner call, heedless of his mother's objections, Shankara left his home in order to lead a life of retirement in the forest. Here, he met the sage Govindacharya and became his pupil. Having completed his studies by the age of 16, Shankara left for Kashi, where he began to formulate his theories and write his philosophical works. Soon his unorthodox views and his reputation as a logical, uncompromising debater grew amongst scholars in Kashi and elsewhere. His most famous and revealing encounter was with Mandana Mishra of the orthodox Mimamsa school of philosophy. For a full 18 days, it is said, the debate raged between the youthful Shankara and the middle-aged Mishra, before Mishra finally conceded defeat. Far from gloating in his triumph, Shankara made Mandana Mishra his disciple and head of the first Shankara Mutt, founded at Sringeri on the banks of the Tunga river in the Chikmagalur district of Karnataka. Shankara continued his yatra around India, founding mutts in Puri, Dwarka and Joshimath. Shankara is believed to have attained Samadhi at Kanchi in Tamil Nadu. A life-size image of the philosopher saint is installed in a shrine close to the temple of Kamakshi. Although he was merely about 30 years old when he died, Shankara left behind him a revolutionary corpus of philosophical works. His commentaries on the Brahma Sutra, the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads, and such original works as the Viveka Chudamani have exercised an incalculable influence on the history of philosophy throughout Asia. Yet Shankara's teachings were not arid and soulless. He recognized the place, in fact the need for bhakti. He held that the Brahman manifests itself as Ishvara, the personal creator God, whose aspects comprise the trinity of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, as well as other forms such as the Mother Goddess. He composed, in fact, about 220 hymns in praise of the various forms of Godhead, hymns that are unrivaled in their poetic beauty and devotional fervor.
Does the awareness that all is illusion or Maya, that God is within oneself, imply that we can will away the entire universe? Far from it. Not only must we recognize the materiality of the world, we must devise strategies to cope with it in pragmatic terms. In this context, I'm reminded of a parable of Sri Ramakrishna's, fresh from a lesson in which he had learned of avidya and Maya, and imbibed the principle of Tat Tvamasi, that art thou. Brimming over with the power of this new-found knowledge, a young man walked home from his Gurukul. He found his path obstructed by an elephant. "Get out of the elephant's path," pleaded the Mahout. Our young friend smiled and thought, "Fool of a Mahout, does he not realize I am God? The elephant is God too. Should God be afraid of God?" And so he continued on his path, only to be raised aloft and flung aside by the noble animal. Bruised and shattered, the young man sought clarifications from his guru the next day. After listening serenely to the tale, the Guru replied, "Indeed, you are God. So is the elephant. Well, why did you not listen to God's voice calling to you from the Mahuth, who is also God, to clear the way?" Thank you for being with us on Matters of Faith. Do join us again next week as we continue our journey inwards. Good night.